I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Good evening, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you may be. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together Rebecca and I are going to bring you an hour of unforgettable radio called For a Green Future. And For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of the phytoplankton that's blooming in all the Earth's waterways, and the little fish that eat the phytoplankton, and the big fish and the dolphins that eat the little fish, and pretty much everybody and everything.
Did you know that the mola fish has been called the largest form of plankton? Because while it is huge, it basically just floats and waits for jellyfish to accidentally float into its mouth, and that's its life.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Wow. So I had no idea.
Technically, it's a fish, but
It's blowing my mind, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing about ecology. The environment is you know, never stop learning new things and new weird creatures and cool stuff like that.
there is just crazy stuff going on out there, let me tell you.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is over the next hour, we're going to chat for about 10 minutes or so here, and feel free to call in at any time during that time, 877-909-1007. And we could talk about any environmental or ecological topic that's on your mind. And then we're going to hear from our wonderful Nick Hennessy of Bowling Green State University. He's going to be talking to us all about sustainability, and specifically about their big eco fair that they're having out there next week. Then it's our fantastic advertisers and patrons. And then Rebecca, it will be your turn at the mic. And what have you got?
Okay, I will, in honor of the Vaisakhi festival, the Sikh holiday, I will be doing a segment called Kandi, 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 I Can't Let You Go.
Okay. Sounds fun. And then it's ecological news, and we've got a mix of ecological news this week. It's not all gloom and doom. There's some really good stuff in there. And as I said, hopefully at some point we're going to hear from you. And at 877-909-1007. All right. Well, it is definitely spring. You know, the temps are warming up. Even though, interestingly, today we're right at average temperatures for a change. And, you know, usually we're like 10 or 20 degrees above. But today is a typical, April Sunday. So get out there and enjoy it. One thing, though, that I did want to talk about that always happens in the spring are the little flags that appear on lots of people's lawns. Basically, lawn spraying season has arrived.
Oh, yeah, it has.
Yes, and
I'm just glad I have a bigger dog now, so it doesn't, the little, don't let your small dog, we don't have to, weave back and forth across the street to avoid all those little signs.
Yeah, those little signs with the little pictures of the dogs and the pets on them saying, don't bring your pets onto this lawn. Those are not a joke, folks. Don't ignore that, because every year lots of pets actually do get sick or die from the exposure to the pesticides and the herbicides that people spray all over their lawns. And it's really not necessary, right? I mean, people are trying to get that monoculture, that nothing but this one shade of shiny green grass. And it's really, when you look at it, I find that incredibly boring. It's really kind of just, there's nothing there but the green, and it's not healthy in terms of ecological stuff either, because the more variety you have, the more different sorts of plants you have, the more resilient your lawn is in all kinds of temperatures. So like people who have those, perfectly monochrome green lawns with just the one kind of grass, if something happens that grass can't handle, like it gets too dry or it gets too hot, their entire lawn dies. They have just, no green at all. It's just brown. But if you have lots of different kind of plants in your lawn, and you get little flowers mixed in, and you get bees and all kinds of cute critters and stuff, I just think, personally, I think that's better. And the spraying poison on your lawn not only poisons your lawn, but the manufacturing of it creates tons of problems environmentally and ecologically too. So I'd like to ask people not to spray their lawns this year. Save a little money. Besides, with inflation and so forth, is this really something you need to spend your money on? Okay, so I had an interesting experience yesterday I wanted to talk about. Down there in Bowling Green, they had one of these town halls that they're having all over the country, where a bunch of people got together to talk about, specifically about Bob Latta, the Republican congressman who represents that area in a big, gerrymandered chunk of Northwest Ohio. And people were, of course, talking about all kinds of issues, everything from Social Security to human rights and so forth. But I wanted to talk specifically about environmental things. And I actually was able to give a little speech. At the end, I was one of the people who got to speak at the end and sort of sum things up. And Bob Latta, it turns out, is a member of something called the Conservative Climate Caucus. And this was a caucus that was formed in 2021. And it's conservative Republicans who admit global warming is real, admit that humans are causing it, and say we need to do something about it. The only problem is, in all my researching, I haven't been able to find anything the Conservative Climate Caucus has done.
They don't actually do that,
Since
is what you're saying.
2021.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I mean, they've had
Right.
4 years now, and so far there's been nothing that's happened. And in my speech, I just wanted to review real quick. One of the things that I talked about was they've had lots of opportunities. They have had many opportunities where a conservative climate caucus could have spoken out. And one of them, of course, we've mentioned this before, but just about a month ago, Lee Zeldin, the head of the EPA, came to Ohio and gave a speech. Amongst other things, he said that the EPA wasn't going to protect us from stuff like mercury and particulates anymore. But at the end of that speech, Lee Zeldin called climate change a religion. And to me, that seemed like the perfect point at which something like a conservative climate caucus could have stood up and said, that's ridiculous.
Ow, ow, the gas lights are so bright, they're hurting my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. There is no Church of Climate Change that I know of. I've never been invited to a service. I might even be interested.
Is there
if
free
was one.
donuts?
Probably there'd be like organically
Right.
raised donuts. I don't know. But
I'd have to think about that.
But yeah, obviously climate change is not a religion. It's a science, and it's been very well documented and proven, and we've shown charts and graphs, and it's been something that it does not require faith. See, that's the thing. Religion requires faith because at the heart of most religions is something that's just sort of like absolutely impossible, some sort of miraculous thing that just doesn't happen in the real world.
I would say more that religion is about things that cannot be proven, and science is about things that can. And guess what? Climate change can be proven because it comes from science.
Okay, I'll accept that, but it doesn't have that element of fantasy that you need in a religion, in a good religion. So that was just it was kind of heartening. There was over 250 people there, and it was very civil. Bob Latta said he wasn't going to attend, even though he was invited many times, because he thought he said it was going to be like just this platform of ridiculousness or whatever. I forget what word he said, but he made it clear that he thought it was going to be like 100 people ganging up on him. But what it was 250 people very calmly, very rationally putting out all these questions about what the Congress isn't doing, like,
well, if he had actually showed up, he might have said things so annoying that it got less calm and rational.
That's possible.
Yeah.
That's possible, but what he needed to show was a little bit of courage and to actually appear in front of your own constituents. And
yeah, that's the thing. You don't get to, like, what's the guy in bowling in Toledo used to pull this business that like he would run away from constituents who going in appeared at all hostile. Well, guess what? Rob Portman. Yeah, that was the guy. Yeah, he was dreadfully sensitive for someone in the political realm. I'm going to say, I have to deal with people who are not complimentary or friendly in my daily life, and I don't get to run away from it, and I don't even get paid. Grow up, Bob.
Yeah, they do make pretty good money.
Bob and Rob too.
Congressmen and senators, and yeah. So the theme of the thing was where's Bob, and it was like I say, it was very heartening. So I do also. There was one other thing I wanted to mention this morning, and that was I was watching public television this past week, and there was a documentary in there about the rainforest, and they just tossed in. There was just this sentence they tossed it in that kind of blew my mind, and it turns out that trees actually communicate with birds by scent.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had no idea that this was a thing, but apparently if a tree is being attacked by caterpillars, right, it releases scent into the air that the birds smell, and like the tree saying, "Hey, I'm covered with caterpillars. Come have a meal." And so the birds
you can work out some kind of an arrangement.
Yeah, birds will prefer the trees that are giving off these odors.
Okay.
And scientists didn't think that like smell was that important to birds. We always think of them as like visual creatures, but so like I said at the beginning, that's one thing about looking at nature and ecology and the environment. You're always learning, big new things that just sort of blow your mind and change your whole perception of stuff. And so the idea that trees talk to birds using these chemical signals is really kind of cool. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. So next time you look at a tree with a bunch of caterpillars on it, you know that it's like calling out to the birds, like, "Come on, come help! It's dinner time."
So they're actually they're doing the trees a favor.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's trading favors, kind of.
Right. So anyway, that was just some musings, some environmental musings to get the show going. And now we're going to go off to an interview with Nick Hennessy from Bowling Green State University, and we're going to talk about sustainability and ecology and stuff like that there. So let's go to that interview.
Hello, and welcome to For a Green Future. Could you please just share with us your name and your title?
Certainly. Dr. Nick Hennessy, Sustainability Manager at Bowling Green State University.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us. And I asked you to come on the show this month because it is, in fact, Earth Month. And you folks are doing a fair amount of stuff in relation to Earth Month. Could you sort of give us an overview?
Sure, we are doing a fair amount of stuff. We try to pack April every year with a variety of things, to celebrate sustainability in the environment, and at the same time to educate and inform and things of that sort to fulfill our sustainability goals. But so looking at the schedule, we've got a couple things that have already happened, but and a couple things that are getting ready to happen. So probably the biggest thing was that's happened is we had the electronics recycling drive community-wide last Saturday, April 5th. Despite the nasty weather, huge turnout. We can talk a little bit about that, but if you want any follow-up on that, because it was probably the biggest one that we have held in my time here in this position. So really, really tremendous. This Friday, I guess that's tomorrow, there is, in partnership with the National Wildlife Federation, there is a campus waterways cleanup. You may not think there are any waterways on campus, but yeah, there are. We have some ponds, we have some water features on the old golf course. There's a lot of sources for where trash, single-use plastics, etc., kind of accumulate, and we want to try and head that off before it heads any further down the chain into the Maumee River or anywhere else. Next Wednesday is our Eco Fair, and that's huge. From 11 to 2, that's in front of the Union, an outdoor event where we have live birds of prey from the Back to the Wild organization out of Castalia. We've got some energy efficient vehicles from the Thayer dealerships, handing out free native tree seedlings this year. So among many other things. So that's a very large event. We're planting trees at 3 different projects in the next 2 weeks that students can be involved in. We've got a bike ride going on Saturday, April 19th on the Slippery Elm. And we've got partnership in the city of Bowling Green Earth Day celebration as well. So those are some of the highlights, and we've got other bits and pieces going on. Of course, our end of year collection for When You Move Out, Don't Throw It Out, which is in its 22nd year. All kinds of fun. And it's never too late to still get involved in sustainability, even though we're headed towards the end of the semester.
Let's circle back to that electronics recycling. I actually made use of that. I had a couple old VCRs that didn't work and things, tossed them in there.
Yeah, I thought I saw you in the drive-through. I think it's all kind of a blur because it was nonstop vehicles the entire morning. So I lose track of who I saw and who I didn't see.
Yeah, there was quite a line when I got there. And I saw people, I saw some people dropping off like washers and dryers, and you just had these bins that were full. Could you give us an idea of like the scale of what you guys recovered and now what happens to all that stuff?
Yeah, I don't have a tonnage yet. I should get that very soon, and if I do, I'll follow up with you so that you'll have that and you can share that at some point in time. We partner with an electronics recycler out of Toledo by the name of AIM, AIM e-cycling. They have what's called an R2 certification as an e-cycler. That certification brings a lot of things with it that are important to us from a sustainability standpoint to assure that 100% of what we're providing does get recycled and does not get shipped overseas, does not get thrown away, or anything of that sort. So in exchange for that, the company, makes it very clear to us what they accept and what they don't accept, and what they will pick up and put on the truck and such and take to Toledo for their processing. It's the company that BGSU is contracted with as well for our IT equipment and anything else in the electronic realm that gets cast off. So my area, is the other big component of that because we deal with all the other stuff that's electronic, that's not IT, including toner cartridges, inkjet cartridges, batteries. All that gets included into the electronic realm as well. So as an R2 recycler or certified recycler, uh, which is actually a requirement in our purchasing specs when we're vetting that service. Um, they do a combination of two things. One, flat out recycling of equipment. The other is they do some refurbishing and reuse as well. So that would be maybe for more of the higher end IT products. So along with that comes their included with them is the secure destruction of personal identifiable information that might be on hard drives or other devices. That's extremely valuable.
All
Yeah,
right.
and the weight will be the high. I'm told anyway that the weight will be the highest of any event that we've ever held. I was told that I'm fairly certain anyway, that it is one of, if not the largest community sponsored event in the history of the company. So I'll wait to see on that, and we'll wait to see on the weight. But you're right, the hoppers were full. We had to call for backup to get more empty boxes because they got filled within the first hour and a half of the program, despite the rain. And it was a 4 hour long program. So we had to, I think the last of the items didn't get loaded onto the truck and then pull out of the ice arena parking lot until pretty close to 6 o'clock on Saturday evening.
Now, the people doing the loading, I noticed you had quite a crew of BGSU students there. Do you see any like diminishment in the enthusiasm of young people for things like recycling and sustainability and basically trying to live more eco-friendly?
Yeah, that's a good question, of course, because I've been in this position since 2008. So, you know, you would think that I could see, trends and involvements and those sort of things. And it's the student involvement percentage is actually up right now. Part of that, I think, of course, is that there's always an interest in being able to do some sort of hands-on thing with sustainability. In addition to that, there's a service that the university uses, and it's like a dashboard for volunteers, and community partners use this as well, not just on-campus partners. Um, BGSU Serves is the name of it, but it's an online dashboard that makes it really easy for students to sign up to participate in service projects. So we list all of our needs, all the projects we want to do, from a tree planting to helping with electronics to, doing book recycling, putting books into hoppers, or other hands-on projects. Students are looking for service hours. You've heard about the Thompson Scholar Program and how that's, just really, really increased over the past couple of years. And you've got many students with a service hour requirement, in addition to having an interest, and we provide them with the opportunity. So I want to say, at least for the last 2 years, sustainability has been the greatest provider of service projects by number of any other office on campus, and the greatest provider or collector, I guess, of student hours that have been put into projects as well, collectively, which isn't bad, for an office with one full-time person
Great.
and student interns, a handful of student interns, to be able to do that. But the BGSU Serves platform provided by the Marvin Center for Leadership is tremendous and really helps facilitate, us getting a lot done on campus and sustainability. So that's part of it. But I think the interest is still there as well. The interest, it's funny to see some things kind of waver, some things stay constant. I think that over the years, the percentage of students getting involved in hands-on projects has, at a minimum, remained steady, but probably increased as well.
Okay.
Students, as you know, nationally, I think maybe students as quote unquote activists, there's been some wobbling there, perhaps, and some changes maybe that started happening with COVID, and I think that's nationwide as well, that activism may have some, ebbs and flows, but volunteerism and involvement in sustainability at that level, I'm thankful to say that it is high.
So you mentioned your sustainability goals as an institution. I mean, as you said, you've been at this for a long time. And when sustainability first caught on as kind of like a buzzword in different circles, the idea was that we could make our whole society sustainable, that we can make our whole economy circular, have no more need for dumping, and we could just make do, recycle all the stuff that we use. Um, so you've been sort of in the trenches trying to make that happen for a long time. How far along are we? How far do we have to go? And at this point in your life, do you still think that is a possible goal for our society?
Yeah, those are all good questions. So trying to relate what happens here at BGSU to society in general would be a tough thing to do, I think. And it's, an added layer to all this, is kind of all the turmoil, if you will, and such that seems to be occurring nationally right now with nearly everything. But that's another story for another day. But from our standpoint, our three main sustainability goals as an institution have remained stable and very constant, I think. So we're not wavering from those. So our goals are emissions reduction and energy conservation. The second one is waste reduction and resource conservation. And the third is sustainability education and outreach. I think progress has been made on all three of those. It's painstaking sometimes to figure that out because we have to very, very carefully measure, monitor, record, most of the time for public edification, our progress. We're a public institution for the public good. We are, a state institution as well. So, we do things like monitor our carbon emissions. Where's it coming from on campus? What's generating that? We monitor our volumes of waste. We know sometimes even from dumpster to dumpster, what's the weight that we're casting off into landfill? What are we diverting from the waste stream? How have we diversified that and increased that over the years? And then as far as education and outreach, we just talked about student involvement. We want to further educating students at the institution to be civic leaders and participants, in overall sustainability. So, there's anecdotal ways to answer your question and say, have we moved forward on that? Which certainly anecdotally, there's many instances that would show that we've made progress. But then there's also looking at the cold hard stats, tons of CO2 equivalent or metric tons of CO2 equivalent, and where we stand on the bar charts and graphs and such that show, are we meeting our reduction set forth in our climate action plan? Are we on target? Are we, what's left to do? So I guess the short answer is, yeah, there's still things to do. There's still plenty of things to do to further ourselves on there, but we're following a path. And, despite being a city in and of ourselves in terms of size and operations and things like that, I've seen a lot of progress over the years. That's a good thing. I mean, I think we'd be remiss if we thought that we were done, if we thought that we couldn't do more and didn't want to try to expand our efforts and such, which are all things that we're doing, of course. But that's a team effort, that involves the entire community and sometimes even partnership with the city of Bowling Green as well. So you mentioned it being a buzzword with that one. Maybe when I started in this position, it was, that was more of a novel thing, that, oh, wow, the institutions pursuing sustainability with a full-time position, full-time office. I think that's more commonplace now. I think it's, despite everything that might be happening, that you see more colleges and universities, in particular, statewide and certainly nationwide, with full-time offices devoted to making the institution more sustainable because they're realizing, what the results of that can be.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
All of our Earth Month events are free and open to the public. So if anybody should be so inclined and want to, certainly the Eco Fair too, come by and get yourself a free native tree seedling on that. We had a little grant that we were able to utilize to make that happen. And if you've never seen live birds of prey on a perch sitting right in front of you, no cage, to see like a bald eagle, to see a peregrine falcon, the real life Freddie Falcon, owls and things, that this Back to the Wild brings to educate and show us. It's tremendous. And I think students walk by and don't believe what they're seeing, and then, out come the cameras for pictures and selfies and things of that sort. We have the herp lab from campus too, depending on what the temperature is going to be that day. If it holds for us anyway, that's also pretty tremendous to see their reptiles and snakes and such, and that's probably got as much of a line of people looking at it than the birds do. But you can learn a lot about the state of sustainability and ways to be involved and ways that you as an individual can do things at the Eco Fair, or even just by looking at our website online, campus sustainability, or if you do a search, and we have a website, bjsu.edu/earth, bjsu.edu/earth to check that out. That'll link you to all kinds of things that are happening because, the fact of the matter is, everybody does have a role when it comes to sustainability. It cannot be done by one person, one office. It's everybody has to participate as a team. And that's, if I had to have one parting suggestion or sentence from my years as sustainability manager here, it would be that don't think that your effort as an individual is not needed or is not effective, because your individual effort collectively is tremendous. Don't give up on that at all.
So a nice little inspirational speech there at the end by Nick Hennessy. And what he said about their environmental efforts is also, of course, true about our show. We could not do it alone. And we are very grateful to our advertisers and patrons for making it possible. And so, one of our patrons is the Wood County Park District. Imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place, it's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before. By maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore, get outside, experience nature. Your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or you can call 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. So, we are also brought to you by our patrons, and our patrons are incredible people who have gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our wonderful Patreon page. They scrolled down through looking for that level of membership that matches their budget, and they just signed up, and now every month painlessly a little bit comes out of their account, comes over to us, and that is how we can keep this show going. And one of the reasons we keep the show going is so that every week we can hear from Rebecca about a cool little eco topic. What have you got this week, Rebecca?
All right. Well, today, actually, if you've been feeling festive and don't know why, it might be because you instinctually sense that it's the Vaisakhi. Correct my pronunciation if you want to. Festival that Sikhs is celebrated in the Punjab and worldwide by Sikhs, actually. In addition to being a harvest festival, I don't know if they're on a wet or dry season situation or if they have 2 crops a year or what. But anyway, apparently in northern India, it's time to harvest stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's also the beginning of the solar new year, and it honors in Sikh religion. It honors the founding of the Khalsa, which is a religious order whose members follow a very pure form of Sikhism, pay extra attention to following, the rules about how you dress and, being honorable and things, honorable and courageous and all that stuff, integrity, bravery, that kind of thing that Sikhs are into. So yeah, it's primarily celebrated in the Punjab region and northern India, which of course, what is the Punjab? Well, okay, part of it's in Pakistan, part of it's in the state of Punjab in northern India, and I think part of it is in a couple of other states in northern India. It's a whole region, but yeah. Also, sometimes there's trouble over exactly what country the Punjab and various parts of it are in, between India and Pakistan mostly. So yeah, included in that general ecosystem is the Kandi region, or the Kandi belt, as it's called, which runs along the foothills of the Shivalik Hills, which are part of the Himalayas. So essentially, it's right between this set of foothills and a big plain. It's it's a transitional zone, also referred to as a submontane region, meaning it's close to the mountains, but not in them, I guess. So, yeah, Kandi lies entirely in the Indian state of Punjab, apparently. So, it's just in the state of Punjab, not the whole region of Punjab. I had to put in some extra effort to determine that because I'm confused about this stuff and my charming American ignorance. But, yeah, the name actually means border in the Dogri language of northern India. So I have to admit, for many, many years, I've been under or at least a strong suspicion, if not misapprehension, that Kandi came from the Kandi region. It does not.
Okay.
Although I wasn't completely wrong, or I wasn't that far off, because the word for candy comes from khanda, which is sugar in Sanskrit, which is a classical Indian language, which, as far as I know, doesn't bear much relation to the regional language of Dogri.
No, but candy is kind of a universal language, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Sugar is everyone loves sugar. I love sugar anyway. I like it a lot. Way too much, in fact. But yeah, so the ecosystem of the Kandi is dry, deciduous scrub forest, basically. And at this point, I started to learn a lot of new words, because scrub forest, the official, most of us know it when we see it, but it's a forest is mostly shrubs and small trees. It's also a degraded ecosystem because it has experienced a decline in its health and functionality due to human activity and/or natural events. And this involves a loss of biodiversity, disruption of ecological processes, and reduced ecosystem services. What's all that mean, you ask, Becca? Well, I know either. So eco-processes are interactions and connections between living and non-living systems, and the flow of energy, nutrients, and species that shape the functioning and dynamics of an ecosystem, including like the water cycle, changes in the species that make up the ecosystem community of organisms. And ecosystem services is benefits that people get from nature. So it's been asked to do too much for too long, basically, and it's not working as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some problems, including deforestation, mining, urbanization, biodiversity loss, soil erosion, groundwater depletion. And the importance of the Punjab and why these problems need to be corrected, or of the Kandi region, is that the forests, although they may look little and scrubby, absorb a lot of carbon dioxide, it's what we call a carbon sink, I believe, which is good. We need more of those, not less. We need to help them all out if they are looking peaked. And also, there's a pretty large variety of plant species there, even though it looks all yellow and dry, but there's a lot of stuff living there. In fact, it's just doing things its way, not like where you live. But yeah, obviously, it's important for water regulation and supply, because if you live in a plain, which is a popular place to put cities, you probably are getting probably most of your water sources start up in the mountains. And you want them to keep doing that, but you don't want them to go too fast. So that little scrub forest there with a sort of maybe not actual hills or foothills, but just kind of, slightly elevated ground, slightly bumpy.
Undulating.
Yes, undulating. Yeah, it's acting as a kind of filter and making sure that you get your water in a nice steady stream and not all at once and then nothing. So that it washes everything away, and then you're sitting there and the dust storm comes. That's bad. So yeah, that is why we need to, as a world, be concerned about the Kandi region of India. And as my zinger fact here, one of the organisms you can see there is something called a barking deer.
Uh-huh.
You can tell because it's a deer and it starts barking at you. And that's how you know it's a barking deer.
Interesting.
Yes.
Hmm.
I'd like to see that personally.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool to hear. I wonder if they developed that as a mechanism to like misdirect hunting dogs.
Maybe.
Over
I don't
there,
know.
over there.
I think it would seriously freak my dog out
To
if
get
that
barked at by
happened.
a
Like,
deer.
what is that? It's barking at me. It's a prey animal.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca,
You're
for that
welcome.
visit to the Indian subcontinent. And now on to ecological news. And so I thought I'd start off with some good news to get us, prepared for what's to come. But Ember did it's a think tank out of the UK, and they did their Global Electricity Review of 2025. And globally, solar and wind together, and other sources of low carbon energy have, for the first time since in about 100 years, low carbon sources have produced 40%. All right, they've produced 40% of all the electricity produced, 40.9% to be exact.
Getting there. Definitely
And so
getting
fossil did less than 60%. They did 59.1%. So that is the first time that the low carbon sources have ever achieved that percentage since we started using oil and natural gas for a lot of our stuff. So that is really good news. And the biggest gain, of course, was solar. That went up by 29%. And renewables increased by 858 terawatt hours, which, a terawatt is is 1,000 billion kilowatts. So
Okie
this was a record. It increased 49%. The old record was back in 2022. So it's basically wind and solar are growing by leaps and bounds. Together, wind and solar produced 15% of all the electricity generated in 2024, which actually, for the first time, it beat hydro. All the hydropower in the world only produced 14% of our electricity. Wind and solar together produced 15%. And poor, sad nuclear power was down there around 9%. But it was nukes actually hit a 45-year low in 2024, which is nice.
And this is the all-star, which is going to save us from global warming.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah, this is what a lot of the Democrats and Republicans just love nukes because, but they only produce 69 terawatt hours of that 858 terawatt hours. So they're kind of like also rans. Unfortunately, fossil fuel consumption was up again, 1.4%, and that led to an increase in CO2 emissions of 1.6%, or last year, electricity generation using carbon put 14.6 billion tons of carbon in the air. So the reason that the fossils still went up was that there was a 4% increase in demand, and that 4% increase was largely pushed by air conditioning because, as you know, as we've reported, they had heat waves all over the world last year. India, Australia, the EU, every place had heat waves, and so that increased air conditioning demand, and that's why electricity demand actually increased. And the increase in renewable energy just about matched all the increased demand. But what is happening also is that, so that was the main thing, but also electricity is replacing fossil for more and more jobs. Like, when you drive an electric car, that's replacing the fossil fuel you would have driven if you had a gas car.
So when I was growing up, we were skinflints, basically. We were sort of a up-and-coming, struggling family, so trying to make it into the middle class. So, we air conditioning was for extra hot days, and probably we'd have one room in the house where everybody could go and, sleep on little cots or sleeping bags or whatever on the carpet, if it was really, really hot.
Right.
If you're in a situation where for months at a time you can't go outdoors because it's life-threatening, it's like at a certain point, when do you acknowledge that you don't live on a habitable planet anymore,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we may get to find that point out because,
Yeah.
things are still heading in the wrong direction. But the overall analysis by the Ember group there in UK is that we can do it, that basically the rate at which wind and solar are scaling up and the ability to produce more and more of it each year, we can produce enough to meet all the demand, and we can do it in time to stop us from all being destroyed by global warming. We're not there yet, but one interesting part is that 0.7% of that increase in demand was because of things like EVs and heat pumps, people making the transition to an electric economy as opposed to a fossil fuel economy. And so we're on our way. Okay, we're still in the come behind part. This is a sports station most of the time, and I like to talk about the Bills when they had that huge, amazing comeback, one of the biggest comebacks in NFL history. And as I listened to that game as it was happening live, and we just went from absolute despair to, just touchdown after touchdown, and the Bills made up, I think it was 34 points in that game or something like that. If someone wants to correct me, feel free to call on 877-909-1007. But the point is that we actually finally did it. The Bills did finally come back from one of the biggest losses in NFL history to win the game. And we are doing it. Okay, like this is like one of those touchdowns in that progress towards finally turning the game around and winning it. This was a touchdown, folks. So be happy. Okay, on to the next story, now we have to be sad, unfortunately. The U.S. Department of Energy made an announcement this week on energy.gov.
Oh, is this an analogy involving the Browns? Because that's usually. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, as opposed to the Greens.
Right,
Yeah, the
yeah.
Browns, definitely. Back on April 8th, they put out something on their website, energy.gov. Chris Wright, the head of the Department of Energy, said that we are going to go all in on coal, that we're going to bring coal back.
No. All out on coal. Out.
Yeah, I know, but he says it's affordable, reliable, and secure. But of course, coal costs.
Okay,
go ahead.
wait a minute. There's not an unlimited coal well coming up from the Earth's. What do you mean secure? There's only so much of that stuff.
True.
Are you going to call that secure ever? First of all.
Well, but there is enough for us to like completely cook ourselves if we tried to burn it all.
Okay.
But it's definitely not affordable because coal generated power costs twice as much as wind and solar generated power. So, this basically he made an announcement: we're going to double your electric bill.
Yay.
Um, and he
That's what everyone
recreated,
needs right now.
yeah, he recreated something called the Coal Council, which, to me that sounds like some table of supervillains sitting around.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, in robes or something. But so they've reconstituted something called the Coal Council, and they're also putting $200 billion out in loans for things like getting. They want to get minerals from coal ash. So like, coal ash is just full of like like toxic chemicals like arsenic and other heavy metals. But if you could separate them out, then you can make money off them. That's the plan. I don't know. But it's just important to remember that last year, we reported on this last week actually, is that worldwide, wind and solar passed coal in 2024. Wind and solar produced 17% of the world's energy.
Coal is a loser
Coal
with a
only
big L
produced-
on his forehead.
Yeah, coal only produced 15. So to get up there and announce that we're going to back the loser, basically,
Yay.
kind of flies in the face of reality globally. So just a heads up on that. Next story. This is from The Guardian on March 25th. U.S. honeybee death hits record high as scientists scramble to find main cause. And apparently this was the worst winter. Normally 10 to 20% of beehives don't survive the winter up here in the northern hemisphere of the United States. Well, in 2024, more than 60% of our honeybee hives died, did not make it through the winter.
Oh my.
And the Department of Agriculture was trying to figure it out. They have a laboratory, and they were doing tests for things like viruses and stuff, but Doge fired them all.
Okay.
So we don't know why this year was so astronomically higher than normal. It is already affecting crop yields, and the California almond crop is kind of the first crop that the honeybees, the itinerant honeybee industry that trucks honeybees all over the country. The California almond farms are one of the first places they go, and then they kind of work their way back east. And this year, some of the California orchards were not able to be fully pollinated because there literally just weren't enough bees, which means higher almond prices. A lot of beekeepers are going bust from the fact that so many of their hives didn't make it through the winter. The story had an interview with one beekeeper that literally lost every single bee. Like the guy said, not only did all the bees die, but even that we don't even have piles of dead bees. Like all the hives are just empty. There's nothing there. So with that inability to specifically say what it is, there's all kinds of guesses. Part of it's the climate crisis, habitat loss, pesticides, mites. There's a specific mite that's been attacking honeybees, and diseases. And there's also, on a separate research, there's also some evidence that microplastics could be killing the bees. A study in 2021 by a fellow named Yahya Al-Nagar, who found that basically the more microplastic there is, the less healthy the bees are. So it could be the microplastics are weakening them, and so then they fall, prey to things like viruses and other diseases. Now, there are actually more hives, more colonies now that we're up to 3.8 million versus 2.8 million in 2020, but that's because there's been this big boom in hobbyist apiaries. People who have
It's all the rage. People are even doing it in Ohio in their backyards. I know a couple people.
Yeah, and so there's actually more honeybees But the problem is those don't help our agricultural industry, and wild bee populations are also dying out, and some of them have actually gone extinct already. We got 4,000 native honeybee species, and so whatever the problem is that's attacking our hive bees, our industrial bees, are also attacking the wild bees. So there's
I
that.
hope it didn't. That's not why our little blue bees that we had early in the summer last year disappeared somewhere.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, wow. I just noticed the time. We're almost out of time. Got to zip through some stories here. Keystone Oil pipeline had a big explosion, sprayed 150,000 gallons of crude oil all over farms fields in North Dakota. It was a 30-inch pipe and the underground pipe, and the oil didn't bubble up till 300 yards away from the break. So
Oops.
tons of oil in the groundwater, just as the opponents to the Keystone XL pipeline said would happen. Scientific American on April 8th, did scientists actually de-extinct the dire wolf? And basically they're saying, you might have seen the news reports that they brought dire wolves back from extinction. Well, actually, it turns out they're gray wolves that they just genetically modified to look like dire wolves.
Because real dire wolves are more closely related to dingoes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, something.
So, yeah, coyotes.
Coyotes.
Well, I guess that's about it for this show because we are out of time. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
No. I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No